began about a half hour ago. A senior official is expected to brief shortly at FBI headquarters in Washington. We will, of course, be monitoring that, probably carry it live for you. Also at the Pentagon, where there's been very little information about the extent of damage today, understandably little information. The Defense Department wanting to give out as few details as possible, but there has been damage at the Pentagon. There have been some fatalities there. The Defense Department confirmed that several hours ago, and some injured. But we will also be receiving a Pentagon briefing somewhere along the line this afternoon. The pictures you're seeing now on videotape are from the World Trade Center area. Let me point out that it wasn't just the collapse of the twin towers of the World Trade Center, one tower and then the other, where 50,000 people generally work on any given workday and where thousands more generally visit, but there were buildings around the World Trade Center that in the avalanche of debris, the concrete and steel and other materials raining down the whole area, there were other buildings in that section of New York, Lower Manhattan, that collapsed at or about the same time as the World Trade Center. The mayor of New York, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, has said that there's been a, quote, tremendous loss of life. In an interview with CBS News, he wouldn't even speculate as to how much loss of life. There, at last report, there were people known to be still alive in the debris of the World Trade Center collapse. Efforts were being organized to try to get to those people. Now, this is an unprecedented show of terrorist horror, what you're seeing today. The 110-story World Trade Center collapsed in this shower of rubble and dust and destruction after two hijacked airliners, the airliners carrying a lot of people themselves, slammed into the sides of the twin symbols of American capitalism. And Fuad Ajani from Johns Hopkins University pointing out that the two main targets today, one a symbol of America's economic power, the World Trade Centers, the other the symbol of American military power with the Defense Department. And no one can believe that those two main targets were selected at random. They were selected for their symbolic importance to the nation. New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani said, and I quote him again, "Now the number of casualties will be more than most of us can bear." Now, this was a systematic terrorist attack that included another hijacked plane crashing into the Pentagon. And we very early on this morning said that this was the Pearl Harbor of terrorism. Then following that, at least one U.S. senator picked up on that theme, comparing this to the incidents of 1941's Japanese Pearl Harbor attack that launched World War II. This day, national security was quickly moved up all around the country. The terrorists directed the two planes into the towers in the middle of the morning rush hour. There was no coincidence at the hour they did it. It was right at the height of the rush hour, right at 9 o'clock. And you say, well, how did this happen? Well, we don't know. But apparently, two planes bound from Boston to Los Angeles were hijacked almost simultaneously. Somebody had to go into the cockpit of the plane. Somebody had to command the plane. And somebody said, in effect, I'm a suicide bomber, an airborne suicide bomber. And they crashed the planes into the World Trade Center. And much the same thing is believed to have happened with the crash into the Pentagon. Now, as for what happened in western Pennsylvania in the Pittsburgh area with the plane crashing there, the details are sketchy. And yes, we did report that the FBI believed that there had been a plane crashed at or near the Camp David presidential retreat in Maryland. But that has remained a vague, unconfirmed story throughout the day. What you're watching on your screen now, debris and people, yes, humans, coming down from the upper stories of the World Trade Center before those World Trade Center towers collapsed. Some of the World Trade Center's 50,000 workers were seen leaping from windows to their certain death. That included, in one case, according to eyewitnesses, that included a man and a woman holding hands as they leaped from the World Trade Center as the flames engulfed their floors. Some people jumped from as high as the 80th floor. This happened as the planes exploded into fireballs. Unimaginable, these things, but part of today's reality. Now, first reports had at least 600 people undergoing treatment at hospitals. Early reports said 150 of those were in critical condition. At least another 1,500 so-called walking wounded were taken to Liberty State Park in New Jersey for treatment. The mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani, says it may take 2 days before a final figure of the dead and injured becomes known. No one would be surprised if it didn't take longer than 2 days. Yes, there was a New York mayoral primary vote scheduled today in New York that was canceled. I don't have to repeat, but will, that the financial markets closed immediately. They'll have a conference call tonight to determine whether the financial markets will open tomorrow. Hospital officials have been preparing for the worst all day, and they've gotten the worst. The Bellevue Hospital medical director, Eric Mannheimer, called this, and I quote him, a catastrophe of unparalleled proportions. Now, speculation, and please mark the word, italicize the word speculation about the attack, rather quickly focused on terrorist fugitive Osama bin Laden, who was last reported in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's Taliban government, the radical fundamentalist Islamic government of Afghanistan, moved quickly in a public relations effort, understandable from their point of view, to say two things. One, that they deplored this. Two, that they had nothing to do with it. And three, this would surprise some people, the Taliban spokesman saying that Osama bin Laden had nothing to do with this. Exclamation point, pause. That's what they said. And again, we want to come back to nothing but speculation so far. And we pointed out before, and we will point out again, that there are high-level intelligence people in this country and around the world who believe the United States have made a mistake by always attributing almost every terrorist act to Osama bin Laden. There's a school of thought that says we've built him up much larger than he is. I'm not subscribing or not subscribing to that point of view, simply pointing out that there is a point of view, a belief that among some, that we've made too much of Osama bin Laden. But it's way too early to make any conclusions about that. It's just simply to note that speculation centers around Osama bin Laden, as it has in almost every other case of terrorism over the last 6 to 8 years. Although it's true that a lot of people in the United States never heard of Osama bin Laden before the explosions at the U.S. embassies in Eastern Africa in 1998 and the ensuing cruise missile attacks by the United States directed at targets in Sudan and Afghanistan. Before that, Osama bin Laden, he was known in intelligence circles and certainly known in the Middle East and around Afghanistan, but was not all that well known in the United States.
I'm Jack Williams here in Boston, again with the Boston Connection. On board that American Airlines flight was the pilot when it took off, 52-year-old John Oganowski of Dracut. The family is now talking about him.
Difficult to ad-lib what I want to say today. I'm Jim Oganowski, and as you all are aware of the tragedy that's impacted our country today, it's been reported that my brother John was the captain of American Airlines Flight 11, which was hijacked out of Logan Airport this morning en route to Los Angeles, California. John leaves behind a loving family, his wife, 3 lovely daughters, his parents, brothers and sisters, numerous aunts and uncles, friends, loving community. Our family is obviously grieving, as is the whole nation, for what has happened today. I personally think I'm in shock. I'm in some type of denial. I keep looking at the cornfield behind me, hoping that my brother comes walking on out. This tragedy has not only impacted us as a family, but our whole community, and as a nation, our whole country. On a personal side, I ask that I'll come out for this last time, but please respect my parents and the rest of the family's wishes to be alone at this time. I'll give you a little personal on John. He was 52. He was born in Lowell at St. Joe's Hospital My other brother Joe was born at St. John's Hospital. He went to St. Stanislaus School on High Street in Lowell, and then he attended Keith Academy. And after that, he attended what is now University of Lowell. It was Lowell Tech at the time. He joined ROTC in the late 60s when it was not cool to be in the military. He joined the military right after being commissioned as second lieutenant in the Air Force. He flew in the Air Force on T-37s and T-38s, and he capped his career off on C-141 transports right at the close of the Vietnam era. He then pursued his lifelong dream and left the military, become an airline pilot. In 1979, he was hired by American Airlines. He's flown for them for 22 years. The most recent years as a captain on a 767. John loved to fly, but more importantly, of course, he loved his family. And John's legacy is where we stand today. There's 150 acres of land here that John fought for many years with the town of Dracut and the state. There's 150 acres of land here that are going to remain as we see them today as open space through the Massachusetts Agricultural Preservation Act. So take a good look at the beauty of the land around here. That's John's legacy. I ask all of you for your prayers for, as I refer to him, as Brother John. And I ask you to also pray for our whole country today in this tragedy that's impacting our whole country. I would like to take a moment to thank the Dracut Police Department for their assistance, to most of the media for respecting our privacy, and particularly the folks at American Airlines who have been very kind and helpful to us today. I'll take a couple of quick questions and then I'm going to go back in. And
John leave here this morning for his...
Yeah, John left here this morning, probably a little after 6 this morning. And a few of us in our family, we have this little thing when we drive by someone's house, we just give them a little toot-toot on the horn. And John drove by Uncle Al's house a little after 6, gave him his little toot-toot.
Is that his regular route to fly to L.A.?
It has been for the past couple of years.
Did he ever talk about the chance of terrorism?
No, he didn't.
Jim?
No, actually, we never spoke of my work together. We never spoke of his work together. We spoke of farming together, of the family. But our work was kind of a off-limits area. We never discussed much of that.
Jim, can you talk about your military status and your plans to maybe help with what President Bush is calling?
Well, I was en route to Logan Airport this morning myself for when I came. I saw the news, and I had that feeling, and I came home. And I haven't watched the news really since 10 o'clock. I didn't hear the president's comments. So I don't know what else to say on that.
What about your plans? You mentioned to us earlier.
Well, I'm in the Air National Guard, and this is quite a cowardly act, what we have seen today, attacking civilians, not military. Whatever it takes, my unit will be involved, and I would like to be the first one to step forward and be involved with that.
What do you know about
Can you talk a little bit about again, you were on your way to Logan. Can you tell us why you were on your way to Logan, and when did you get a sense that this plane may have been your brother's plane?
I was leaving the house. It was almost 9:30. I turned on the news, and they showed late-breaking news. I watched that for a couple minutes. I got picked up, heading to the airport. We had to stop for a shuttle transfer. I went in to see what's going on for an update, and at that point in time, they said it was an American Airlines flight out of Logan. I had that sinking feeling on that moment. I can't describe it.